Hello, it's time to unhaul some books. I don't know why I feel so stressed filming this video. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, whether that's an author or if you've read these books and you loved them, but there are truly some books in the piles I have around me that I never want to read. I currently own 179 books that I have not read. 179, and I'm looking to read about 90 books this year, so it would take me at least 2 years to read 179 books. So there are points in this video where I might be like, this one sounds kind of cute, but I'm still unhauling it. To me, if a book sounds okay, there's no point in me keeping it just because I own so many other books. Anyway, let's get into it. The first book I'm officially unhauling is After by Anna Todd. I bought this book like 2 or 3 years ago. I got such mixed comments when I bought it. Like some people were like, After is so bad, it's so cheesy and toxic, and then other people were like, I love After, I'm so excited you're buying it. And it's just been sitting on my shelf for a few years. I think my reasoning behind when I bought it is because it was such a huge Wattpad success, and I was a Wattpad girl back in the day, and somehow I never read After on Wattpad when it was popular. So buying it to me felt kind of nostalgic, like, oh, I'm gonna go back and read a book that my middle school self would have loved. I think I've kind of outgrown this book. And I've seen all the movies, so I already know the plot. Bring Me Your Midnight, this was one of my favorite reads of 2023. But this is a book where I own 2 copies of the book. Somehow I accidentally got sent 2, so gonna give this one away, but I hope someone picks it up and loves it. It follows Tana, who's a witch. It's got forbidden love. It was so atmospheric. The world was very cool. There's a lot of politics of the witch coven and the mainland, which is full of humans. I gave it 5 stars, and it's a standalone, which I love because so many fantasy books are such giant series. They're such a big commitment. So I really like that this is just a one and done. If you just want a little fantasy without a big series, this one's for you. Okay, our next stack of books. I'm slowly getting rid of these because I don't like the covers. The first 2 are small books. I can't do this size. Like compared to like the big size, it's so tiny. I don't know. I don't like holding these in my hand and reading them. And the covers with the real people feel so cheesy to me. These 2 books are full-size paperbacks, but the covers also just look so cheesy to me. I figured I can always go back and buy them later if they come out with new covers and I'm interested in the plots. Dutch House. My mom actually gave me this book to unhaul. I was at her house recently and I told her I was gonna film this video and she was like, I've got a book for you. I don't want it anymore. I think this book is like historical literary fiction. She told me she liked it, but didn't love it. That it was a little slow for her. My mom also doesn't have a big bookshelf or anything. She's got like a little nightstand bookshelf. So if a book is not her favorite and doesn't fit on her nightstand bookshelf, she's getting rid of it, which I respect. Shadow and Bone. I loved this book, but let me show you. After I finished this first book, I bought the second and third books. I bought these 2 covers, which I like way more than this cover design. I ended up going to Barnes and buying the first book again in the cover that matches my other 2 books. I think these covers are just way cooler. So I just don't need to own 2 covers of the book, and I like this one way more. Wayward. I think this book is probably so good. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it. The plot sounds really interesting. It follows 3 women from 2019, 1619, and 1942. The cover is stunning, but something I've realized about myself is I don't love historical fiction and I don't love literary fiction. I keep trying literary fiction and just feeling about it every time I read it. Unless one just really entices me, I don't really feel like I need to pick up literary fiction. So Wayward's going. Same with Small Worlds, another literary fiction. Next up, we have 2 dystopian books. One is Lark Ascending, and the other is A Brief History of Living Forever. And I really like dystopian romance, like The Selection, books like that. But I think just general fiction, dystopian books, again, similar to literary fiction, it just doesn't really interest me. I feel like this might be a controversial one that I'm giving away, which is Love Boat Taipei. I bought this book as soon as I heard the movie was coming out because I wanted to read the book first and then watch the movie. And then one night I was so bored and I was like, I really want to watch the movie, so I watched it. And I'm sure there's way more in the book and that the book is better than the movie because books are always better than the movies. I just think it's more fun when you read the book first and then watch the movie, and I messed that up. I just feel like I've gotten the full plot from the movie and I'm not going to get that much more out of the book, but I could be wrong. I could be very wrong in that opinion. The Lifestyle. I picked this out for my book of the month book 1 month, so this is totally my fault because I did pick this book. It follows a main character who is a swinger, which I just thought was so like intriguing. It's so different from anything I've read, but the more I've just like looked at this book on my shelf, I don't know that it's fully for me, but probably such a fun book. Okay, these next 2 books are Christmas books and they sound a little bit similar. One of them is One Last Gift and then the other is The Key to My Heart. Both deal with grief. Both really sound like not your typical holiday rom-com. I never read that many Christmas books in a year because I'm obviously only gonna read maybe like 2 or 3 around Christmas time. And I think in that time, I want something that's gonna fill me with the Christmas spirit. I think I want that cheesy holiday rom-com, just by the fact that these sound more sad. I don't think this is like quite what I'm looking for in a Christmas book. What the River Knows. This one I really debated on whether or not to unhaul this book. It's got fantasy, which traditionally is my thing, but it's also historical fiction, which I haven't like loved in the past. And reading the summary, it's not just like it's set in another time period. I feel like all the historical fiction elements are a really big part of the book. It's set in Egypt and filled with adventure. It really feels more to me like adventure novel than traditional like romantasy, which I think I'm just really in my romantasy era right now. So there may be a point where I adventure out into like general fantasy, adventure books, but right now that's just not something I'm super interested in. Enough by Cassidy Hutchinson. This is a nonfiction political book. It says Cassidy Hutchinson's death was mere steps from the most controversial president in recent American history. I think politics-wise, it's important to, you know, stay up to date, but I'd rather, I think, read a short news article than like an entire book on politics. One of Us is Back. I actually haven't read One of Us is Back. This is the 3rd book in the One of Us is Lying series, and I do really want to read this book, but I own 2 copies somehow. I got this, I think, from the publisher, and somehow they sent me 2 books on accident, so hopefully someone in the Free Little Library likes it, because this series is so great. If you haven't read the series, it's a young adult mystery thriller. There's also a TV show, and it's about 5 students who get sent to detention, and only 4 of them make it out alive. 1 student dies in detention. I need to read this book, but I don't need the 2nd copy. Then we've got Ithaca. Okay, Greek mythology, or just any mythology in general. I think mythology is so interesting when it's a part of a book, but I don't know that I'm interested in mythology enough to read like an entire mythology book. But it follows the story of Penelope of Ithaca, who is the famed wife of Odysseus. So if you are interested in that story and mythology, I bet this book is great. There are also so many stories about men in mythology, so I love that this follows a very powerful mythology woman. The Light is Dimmer, another one where I just don't really love the cover. It's also really short. It's like 250-ish pages, and for a fantasy, I'm just a little skeptical that you can have like a really good fantasy book in about 200 pages, because you have to have so much world building. And I just generally found when I read really short books that they're fun, but don't really have as much depth or don't really have as expansive built out world, because you really can't in that many pages. I have some questions for you. When this book came out, I feel like I saw it everywhere, and I ended up reading some reviews just because I was on the fence about whether or not I wanted to keep it, and a lot of people were saying it's really slow, very long, and kind of focuses more on this woman and her life than the actual like mystery thriller plot. I still think this book could be very good, but I think I just own so many mystery thrillers that I'm so excited to read. My new kind of policy is to be like, if I'm very on the fence about a book and I own other books I know I'm gonna love, why keep the book I'm on the fence about? This is kind of a funny one. I got this book for free. I went to some library and they had like a section of free books that you could take. It says 1,000 unforgettable senior moments. There's some really funny senior moments in here. These are about like famous people just having senior moments, as the title says. And I thought it'd be fun as like a little coffee table book because people could just pick it up and they're like little paragraph, like funny paragraphs to read. But it's just not a very cute book. I think I'd rather put out more like pretty decor books as coffee table books than this book. But I hope someone in the Free Little Library picks it up because it's a funny read. The Burning by Anna Todd. I don't know. I debated on this one because the plot does sound good, but I think just like after hearing a ton of people talk about After and how it's more of like a toxic, cheesier kind of like Wattpad style book, I kind of think that just like Anna Todd as a whole like writes really good books, but I might be like a little bit outgrown her style of writing and her kinds of books. Plus I got this book sent to me and it's the second book in a series. So since I'm already on the fence about reading it, I don't think I'm gonna also go back and buy the first book in the series. Cliff's Edge by Meg Tilly. Another one where I'm on the fence and it's the second book in a series, and I just feel like I have to be really motivated if I happen to own a sequel to read it because I still have to go back and read the first one. I think I got this in a blind date with a book, and it's a One of Them is Famous trope, and when I got it I was so excited to read it because I don't think I had read any of the One of Them is Famous trope, and now I think I've read a lot of One of Them is Famous. I love the trope, but I think I just already know of so many other One of Them is Famous books that are on my TBR that I'm more excited about. Okay, these next stack of books that I have in front of me, it's kind of surprising to me that I would unhaul these books. I did an unhaul video I think last summer, and I don't know if I owned these books at that time, but I probably wouldn't have given away these books even 6 months ago. And these are all pretty much more lighter, cuter romances that are kind of giving me like 3-star vibes, which there's totally nothing wrong with. There I think is definitely a time and place always for like light, cute, fluffy romances, and I definitely own a number of like light like cute fluffy romances that I will be picking up. But I found more and more recently that I'm gravitating a lot more towards romantasy and then romance books that have a lot more depth, more maybe like mature themes in them. So I just want to make sure that the lighter romances I'm keeping are ones that I'm super excited to read. Plus, most all of these do have lower-ish ratings on Goodreads, which I know is controversial to take ratings really heavily into account when choosing what book to read. I think it's important to never fully judge a book based on its rating, just because there's been plenty of popular books that people love that I didn't like, and vice versa. Lots of books that people don't love that I liked. So you always have to read a book for yourself to decide if it's for you. But I do think reviews and ratings are great if you're already on the fence about a book. You can a lot of times get more info on kind of like the tropes, plot points, elements of the book that may or may not be for you. I know there are certain things in books that I generally don't like in books, so if I read in a review that that book has that element to it, then I already know it is less likely to be for me. So I think these are just books that the plot line isn't really grabbing my attention, plus the reviews are not convincing me to read it. The first one is Trading Places. This is about a mechanic and a socialite who trade places. Planes, Trains, and All the Feels is about two characters who are traveling somewhere for different reasons. It says there's a car fire that leaves them stranded, endless delays, a sleepless night in a roadside motel. They're just kind of on this road trip journey, which again, cute, but I think there's just other books I own I'm more interested in. And same with Anne-Marie and the Fox, The Name Drop, and You've Been Served. Someone had to do it. This is a mystery thriller. I think out of all my mystery thrillers, this one is just like on the bottom of my list out of the ones that I own. There's really nothing wrong with it. It is about a character who works at a prestigious New York fashion house, seems more of like a high-end socialite, kind of rich world mystery thriller. It's just like, if it's on the bottom of my list and I already own so many mystery thrillers, will I ever get to it? Probably not. Okay, we're on to the last 5 books, and these books are actually my maybe books. So I would love y'all's opinion on if any of you guys have read these books. Did you like them? Should I keep them? Basically, convince me to read them, or not. Convince me to unhaul them as well. The first one is The Stardust Thief. This is a fantasy, and I think the plot actually sounds super interesting. Our main character is a criminal who hunts and sells illegal magic. That sounds so cool. Any book where the main character is a criminal, I think is so fun. So I think I would really like the fantasy of this book, but it doesn't have any romance, and I know that probably sounds so silly, but so far in my fantasy journey, I've only read romantasy. Even if the romance is a small subplot, just having a little bit of romance, I feel like keeps me going. It's my thing, it's my main genre, so I'm just scared to delve into a fantasy with absolutely zero romance. If any of you guys have read this book, what your thoughts were, do you think I'd like it? Is it a good place to start for my first step into pure fantasy? I don't know. A Winter in New York. Okay, this is a Christmas romance, and I saw Haley Pham read this book, and she had a whole kind of rant about what she didn't like about this book. Again, like, don't judge a book just based on someone else's review, but I think the things that she was saying she didn't like are things I typically wouldn't like either. Just that the main character's motivation was like pretty weak, which made the conflict very weak, and that's something that's a big pet peeve of mine in books, when it feels like the author is like forcing a conflict when there's not really a strong reason for that conflict. So if the conflict doesn't feel strong in a book, I lose interest real quick. Resist. I think the plot of this book sounds really interesting, but this is the second book in a series, and it's like I have to go back and buy the first book and then read the first book before I can get to this one. So I just need some extra motivation to read it in order to like motivate myself to go back and buy the first book. I think the concept sounds super interesting. It's about a world that has no air, and if you want to survive, you have to pay to breathe. Like, that sounds crazy. Filthy Rich Vampire. Okay, this one, basically our main character is a very wealthy vampire, if you couldn't guess from the title. And then our female main character is a human, and she accidentally finds out about his vampire world. And then he strikes up a deal with her. Basically, he needs a girlfriend, so they're gonna fake date for 1 year, and in exchange, he will protect her from the vampires and give her a way out of her mother's crippling medical debt. The plot, I think, sounds like something I would traditionally like, but I don't know why this maybe is so silly. The title, Filthy Rich Vampire, it just sounds so cheesy to me. Like, filthy rich vampire. I don't know. That's probably so stupid of a reason to be on the fence about this book. I just can't decide if it's gonna be really good or really cheesy. Beachline is one that was on my maybes list in my last unhaul video too, so I just need to make a decision on this book. I think the plot sounds interesting. It's about 3 girls who work as au pairs for wealthy families, so I think just like the secrets and behind the scenes of like rich people sounds super cool, but the cover is just so dated, and I do think this is a book that came out quite a while ago. So if I read it, is it just gonna feel very like 2010s? I think I just generally gravitate more towards more contemporary romance, and I don't like the cover. I'm intrigued by the plot, so that's why it's tough. Okay, that is every single book in my unhaul pile. It's now time to give them all away. I just drove to a neighborhood, so hopefully we can walk around and find a bunch of free little libraries. And I'm not gonna be putting all the books in free little libraries in this video because it would be so heavy to carry that many books around. So I just brought like 10 books to do today. Let's go. There's so many books. No books I recognize, but this one seems like it could be good. Putting, I think, my best book in this one. I feel like this library is so perfectly stocked for kids. Look at this Bratz book. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, throwback. 10 books have been donated. I didn't see any books I knew in either of the free little libraries. I feel like free little libraries kind of skew towards kids books. I added lots of adult books. If any adults are looking in the free little libraries, hopefully they come across my books. Anyway, I know I have a bunch more books to donate. I'll probably update you guys on my TikTok or Instagram when I drop those books off at other free little libraries. Anyway, I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!